My next guest truly loves to move people towards a place where they truly feel connected with their business's employer brand. For 20 years, his passion has been helping brands create greater sense of belonging that enables them to attract and retain the right talent. Having worked with countless employer brand teams who work for iconic brands like EY, BHP, Allianz, Toll, AGL, ING, Lion, Bankwest, Rolsh, the list goes on. My next guest has a history of delivering valuable employer brand projects focused on EVP strategy and development, employer brand, and amplification for their EVP. Simon Druery, welcome to Talent Blazers.
Thanks, David. I'm really excited to be here.
We've got a really awesome episode coming up where you are really going to hone in on what you're really mostly passionate about when working with these incredible brands. So I can't wait to unpack that. But for those who don't know who you are and Belong Creative, can you share a little bit about what Belong Creative are all about?
Sure, I'd love to. So Belong Creative, we're a creative communications consultancy, and we specialize in bringing value propositions to life. I'd say everything we do, it's driven by our purpose, which is to create belonging.
Nice. And for those who have gone through an EVP and you know who are in the process of executing their EVP, which you do help people with. What are some of the things they should be thinking about when amplifying their EVP?
I think it really should come back to what are their business objectives. You know, what are they seeing in terms of their talent strategy to support their business strategy? So, you know, is it about transforming reputations? Is it attracting talent, the right talent? Is it reducing attrition? Is it increasing engagement? So it's very much a business by business proposition, depending on where you're headed and your talent journey.
And what do you feel works best in isolation with a few of those use cases that you mentioned in how they're planning to move the needle? With the type of people that need to be engaged with the project internally for that to really happen?
Yeah. Look, it's a good question. I think what I find with a lot of our clients is that there is often a bit of a roadblock just getting the EVP up and running. Sometimes it's the C-suite might not appreciate what is an EVP, what can it actually do as a business. You know, it's not just a marketing tool, it's actually a business tool that can help transform the way you attract and engage and retain talent. So I think getting buy-in from the C-suite, educating them on how it can actually solve some of the problems they have in the business is probably the first step to getting the EVP off the ground.
And where do you see some of the opportunities to operationalize the EVP?
Yeah, look, it's a shame you spend this time sort of developing it and you don't want your EVP to sit on the shelf. And I think operationalizing your EVP, it just makes sense. And what does that look like? Well, to me, we create like interactive toolkits. They help educate leaders around what is the EVP and how can they leverage it, you know, every day in the moments that matter. Equally, toolkits for recruiters, for hiring managers, you know, might be for using in interviews to reflect on the EVP or performance reviews. And then looking at all the different touch points. Like I think we think a lot about externally attracting talent, but there's so many touch points, you know, after recruitment, onboarding, engagement, even offboarding, alumni, where you can embed the EVP into your operations, into your systems and processes.
So you mentioned toolkits at the start. What does a toolkit look like for a hiring manager versus a recruiter? Are they quite similar, or Uh,
Yep. They're similar but tailored to the different types of roles. So a leader, it might be more about the overarching proposition. What is our EVP? How can they reflect on it and educate their teams? A hiring manager, the toolkit might uh, look at more ways that they can use EVP in job interviews with candidates. Um, sometimes we use them externally with recruitment recruiters to really give them a sense of how do we sell a job for this employer, what sets them apart. So it's part education, but also part how can I leverage this information in my role.
So employer brand is really big on telling stories. Are some of those stories that people are saying in that toolkit where hiring managers or recruiters who are empowering agencies that they're working with, they can read them out or quote certain people within the organisation?
Yeah, so you tend to have what's called a messaging framework with your EVP, and you might have an overall narrative, which is generally fixed. And you might use that on your careers website, in your socials, LinkedIn, even in your job ads. But then as it sort of tiers down, you have proof points, and the proof points might be different depending on your talent segment. And then, employer brand managers can use those different proof points if they're trying to attract a certain type of candidate.
And what do you think the most powerful way to amplify your EVP as a must do to really get that messaging out there?
A really growing trend we're seeing at the moment is the use of video. Videos, for me, like when you think about employer branding, to me it's about trust. And the more quickly and more easily you can build trust, the more successful your employer brand. There's nothing that builds trust more quickly than video. Apart from seeing someone, one-on-one, video it's so transparent. It's so authentic. And at the end of the day, we're trying to tell a people story, a human story. And I think video is definitely a must-do for amplifying your EVP.
And what type of video are we talking about in particular?
Look, we use video for in different ways. So from the start, we might use video to actually take people internally through the research that was done to create the EVP and create kind of buy-in and excitement. And we might use video to launch the EVP internally with employees because they're really going to be your advocates. Then we could go and do something that's what we call an evergreen video. It might sit on your careers website, might be a bit more polished. At the moment, we're doing quite a lot of EVP inspired videos. So often with an EVP, you might have a couple of strategic pillars. So we'll develop a video around each pillar that brings it to life. But then beyond that, you want your video to scale and take your employer brand to more people, more markets, and you apply that probably with lower production values, but it comes back to that human personalized content, and that's how you get employer brand out at scale. But it always comes back to those EVP pillars for inspiring content, inspiring conversations, and inspiring stories.
And are you conscious of the diversity, equality, and inclusion initiatives that organisations have when, and are you giving them a bit of a nudge when you're starting to have the conversation about video?
Yeah, it's always the first thing we actually talk about is how can we be representative of your organisation. We want to showcase diversity in all its forms. So that's definitely the first question, especially when we're looking at sourcing who is going to be the face of our EVP.
And how many, say for instance, there's a job family, it could be graduate campaign, it could be we want to attract more, the goal could be we want to attract more women in our engineering department, or there's some
Yeah.
data scientists that they're wanting to recruit for. Like, what? How many videos is how many stories are too many stories regarding video? Like, what kind of sample size are you looking for?
It depends again based on your um, objectives, but I think video is such an amazing communication tool. I recommend put it anywhere and everywhere for our clients. I love that video. You can embed a link in an email. You can stick a QR code on a poster in the lunchroom and feed video. You can put it anywhere and everywhere. And I think the pandemic has taught us that you don't need high quality production all the time. It's actually about the story. And as long as the story is good and engaging, people will interact with it. So I don't think there should be a limit.
Uh, what are your thoughts on people just making a start, not having to wait till an EVP is actually completed, but knowing that video is powerful, that they need to get some stories out there? Are you ever advocating for them to, just make a start on video without having the evidence of this is what our actual EVP is with a nice little ribbon on top?
Yeah. Look, yes. Sometimes investing in an EVP is often a 6 month, quite a large investment. And sometimes employer brand managers might have an urgent need, or they want to do an attraction campaign, and we certainly can leverage video there. I think what you can do instead is take a smaller focus group of your target candidate audience and work out what are the career drivers, what are the things that these sort of people value, and that's your script for your video. So no, you don't need an EVP to do that. But I would recommend, when the time is right, that you do lay down that holistic foundation for what sets you apart as an employer, and then your tactical videos after that can play off that, and then you're building a more cohesive employer brand.
What are your thoughts on new emerging technology? I see TikTok really trending, and companies moving towards TikTok to attract graduates. Have you seen any companies doing that well?
Yeah. TikTok's interesting. It's like just the number one social media app at the moment, and yes, there's a lot of interest at the moment from my clients. Look, some of them are a bit hesitant. They've only started getting into Instagram and testing that. TikTok's kind of the new frontier. What I would say is TikTok's very much about user led. I think if you're kind of corporate, you got to be careful with that. I think it's coming from the front line, or the bottom end, if you like, and letting your employees come up with the content themselves, and framing a campaign around that, rather than having something that feels corporate and sponsored.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting point. Enterprise organisations and the ones that I listed off with that you're engaging with, they're really large businesses in the Asia Pacific region. Let's say averages plus 5,000. There's probably more. They have branding requirements, right? What's the significant reason why they're engaging with someone like you, so that they're able to meet those branding requirements? And and how is that? And two parts to the question: do you think that's why they're a little bit hesitant to jump to TikTok, to just open the floodgates so that users can create endless amount of content, and they may be worried about
Yeah,
that?
look, yeah, that is a concern. The thing is, employer brand lives in the hearts and minds of your target audience. The only thing you can do is influence that. And if what you can do is try and guide and framework, and an EVP would help employees create some user generated content. I think moving forward, that's the only way brands are actually going to be able to sustain kind of constant thirst for content creation is to leverage their employees. And I think over time, as generations move forward, the younger, more mobile savvy people, they love creating content. They've grown up with mobile phones. They do it all the time. Whereas, your boomers and your Gen X, they're probably still a bit hesitant in creating content themselves. They prefer, the corporate head office to send them something that's approved before they can, share it on socials. So it's a growing shift. And I think the other part of the question is probably around often employee brand managers might sit in HR as opposed to marketing. And the marketing people are much more savvy. I shouldn't say that, but probably more familiar with consumer-driven channels. Whereas maybe some of our clients, this is the first time they've ever kind of dipped their toe into certain channels. So it is a learning process.
And do you believe that the branding requirements that these billion-dollar businesses have are preventing them from, having a shaky camera or moving onto a platform that doesn't meet their branding requirements?
I think that was a concern. I think, but the pandemic's kind of squashed that. Like, it was really interesting, even on, free-to-air TV, seeing commercials shot in someone's home and on an iPhone.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have seen that before the pandemic. And that's kind of given us, and really, zooming from home, it's just given us all permission to forget about the shiny production values and concentrate on the quality of content. If you've got good quality stories, good quality messaging, the production values aren't as important in my mind. And I think big brands are now getting on board with that as well.
Okay, that's really good to know. And on that note, I really do thank you for sharing your story and thoughts on this really important topic, which is more the amplification of an EVP. And Simon, thanks for joining me on Talent Blazers.
Thanks, David. I really enjoyed myself.